Hello, today we're going to be discussing skills and perks in the Hunter Call of the Wild and some of the best ones you can pick as a beginner and also as an experienced player. I'm nearly at level 60 now, so I'm going to go through all of the perks that I have, the ones I want to get, and also reasons why I didn't get some of the perks. So you get skill and perk points each time you level up. It alternates between a skill or a perk point, and this goes all the way up to level 37, where at that point you'll get one every 3 levels. So a skill point, then a perk point. So this leaves a total of 22 skill points and 22 perk points that you can get, with the max level of the player being 60. So you can't get all of the skills or perks, so you have to make your decision wisely. Another reason you want to be careful when deciding which skill or perk points you want to apply is that to reset them, it costs a lot of money. So you can reset per category. So at the moment you see I've got Stalker category for skill points, and that would cost me 49,000 to reset all of those. I've spent 14 skill points inside a Stalker, so I'd get all of those 14 back and I could put them wherever. But you'd have to do the same thing for Ambusher and also perks. You've got 4 categories, so it gets very costly. So let's run through the skills one by one, and I'll highlight all of the ones that I've chosen, as well as some of the best that you could choose if you opted to go through a different route. So let's go into Stalker first, where I have 14 skill points spent and 8 out of 13 skills. So at tier 0, this is the one that you have to choose in order to progress to the other tiers, is Locate Tracks. This has 3 levels, each of those brings different benefits, but at level 1, the directional tracking cone becomes more accurate and narrower, both in the world and on the map. So when you're trying to track down an animal, or one that you've just shot, for example, this is something that you will check your map for, and it will show a cone highlighting which kind of direction the next track will be. So if you look at your map after having level 1 of this perk, it will become much narrower, helping you to sort of indicate the general area where the animal's going to be. This is one every player's going to have if you want to go down the Stalker route. At level 2, you will increase the distance at which tracks are visible and highlighted. This applies to the need zones as well as just animal tracks from the footprints. So this can be really useful as you're walking around, just to spot them, as some of them are quite hard to see and you need to get a little bit closer. At level 3, the directional tracking cone is now even narrower, and tracks can be detected even farther away. So again, this is really useful when trying to find need zones or just trying to look for footprints of an animal you're trailing or have shot and now trying to track it down. So I've opted for 3 out of 3. I'll explain the reasons why, but some of the tiers you need to spend skill points essentially to unlock them. So I didn't think some of the other skills were worth it, and definitely having tracks be detected further away, it is ideal for the way I hunt. So let's move into tier 1. So the next skill we're going to talk about is Track Knowledge, and at level 1 you will reveal information about an animal's gender when investigating footprint and vocalizations, which can come in super handy when you're trying to track down males if you're looking for diamonds and such. So at level 2, it reveals information about an approximate animal group size when investigating need zone tracks, and an animal's approximate health when investigating blood trails. So this is super useful when investigating, for example, drink zones. You'll be able to know whether it's a solo animal there or a herd itself, and you can see the number. So you might want to start to gravitate towards ones that have a lot of animals in a herd. And the second part as well, once you've shot an animal, you'll be able to track the blood and see exactly how much health it has. This is again really useful when finding if you've done a vital shot, or if you've been tracking for a long time and an animal staying at 75 to 100% health, you are pretty much not going to find that animal downed. and it's going to get away. So it's really useful to know that earlier, otherwise you could be tracking blood for a long time and don't realize you're probably not going to find that animal. So for level 3, you reveal information about an animal's approximate weight when investigating footprints and the fur type when investigating disturbed vegetation. So for the first part, this is really useful when trying to find max weight animals, which if you're looking for diamonds, this is the way to go. And you'll be able to find these footprints either by the need zones or just as you're walking around. And it can really optimize some of your hunts. And the second part about the fur type when investigating disturbed vegetation does require another skill that comes a lot later on in the game. So I've just turned level 51 and I've only just got this skill. So you won't be benefiting from this part for a long time, but when it does come, this is a perfect combo. So the next skill we're going to talk about is I'm only happy when it rains. This has 2 levels, with the first level being decreasing your visibility in foggy weather, and the second level being decreases your visibility in rainy weather. Personally, I don't use this skill and I don't really see the benefit in it. I usually will just track the wind. I haven't really had many problems with animals kind of spooking, and I will just adapt my hunts to the environment, so it doesn't really benefit me much. And I'd prefer to stick the skill points in locate tracks or track knowledge. And the last one in tier 1 is Hardened. So exploring in the wild has made you a survivor. Gain a 15% increase in health. So this skill, again, I didn't feel like I needed it. The 15% increase in health is great, but I don't find myself often dying, and there's not really any negatives to dying other than you'll spawn at the nearest outpost and have to go back to wherever it is you died. So there's 2 main reasons for dying. One will be full damage and the other is an animal attacking. Usually we're able to dodge out the way, and for full damage just be more careful. It's not worth kind of sinking another skill point into this. So that is 6 skill points that I spent already on this track. And in order to unlock the tier 2 skills, you need to have spent 5 skill points. So I could have stopped after doing 3 in track knowledge and 2 in locate tracks, for example, but I've opted to go for 6 and 6. And let's move on to the tier 2 skills. So the first one is connect the dots, which is each time a track is investigated, a trail line is automatically drawn on your hunter mate between tracks of the active trail. Trail direction is also indicated with an arrow. Investigated tracks that were not dropped in consecutive order have a dotted line drawn between them to indicate that there are more tracks to be found to complete the trail. The dotted line will not occur if 3 tracks in the order are skipped. So I have this skill point, but this is mainly to sync them and unlock later skills. But it can be useful if you are tracking for a long time, just to know the general direction of which way the animal's going. I don't often do any long time tracking. It's either for something that I've shot, or if I do spot a max weight animal, I will track. But I'm usually pretty good at just picking up all of the tracks without needing to resort to the hunter mate. So not really a necessity in terms of skills. But the next one is, and that's soft feet. So at level 1, you reduce the noise generated when moving through foliage, such as grass and leaves, and at level 2 you reduce the noise generated when moving through larger vegetation such as bushes and shrubs. One thing that you find as a new player is that you are really loud, and one of the first maps that you spawn on, Hirschenfeld, has a lot of grass, bushes and shrubs, so you find yourself spooking animals all the time. So soft feet is vital to make sure that your hunts go smoothly, and this is one that you want to put 2 points into as soon as you can. The last skill on the tier list is weather prediction. Extensive studies in the art of meteorology has unlocked the ability to make accurate predictions about local weather conditions. So at level 1, you unlock the ability to approximate when the weather will change and to what state. For example, when it goes from clear to rainy. And at level 2, it further extends the ability to predict weather changes in the future. So coupled with the skill earlier, I'm only happy when it rains, this could be useful, but weather doesn't really play much of an impact in my hunts. And if it's rainy, windy, I'm not too fussed, and I'll just adapt, as I say, to my hunt. So it's not needed in terms of these skills. So this is also an active skill, which means that once you purchase it, you'll have to activate it. But there's other more vital skills that you will want to activate instead. So for this, I skipped. So in order to unlock tier 3, you will have to have 9 skill points spent. So this is the reason why I had sunk the point into connect the dots. So by the time I'd got to these skills, I had already had 2 points in soft feet, I had 3 points in track knowledge, and I had 3 points in locate tracks, which were total 8 points. So I needed to put one of my points elsewhere, and that would unlock tier 3 for me. So I chose connect the dots, although I don't really use it. So this now unlocked tier 3 for me, and I could choose some of these perks. So let's run through them. First off, we have Innate Triangulation. Each level decreases the size of the animal vocalization indicator in the world, making it easier to pinpoint the position of the animal that produced the call. So as you walk around the map, you will have animals that do mating calls, warning calls, and they will help you kind of realize whether there's any animals nearby, or if you're using callers, you can use the mating calls to figure out kind of if you're getting closer, if they're calling back, and what kind of direction they're in. I'm not really using this much, so you can put 2 points into it, so it's decreasing the size of that vocalization indicator. But for me, the starter, kind of the default indicator, is enough to really give you a sense of direction that you start to walk into when they're making these calls. So again, I needed to put skill points into something in order to unlock tier 4, so this is the one that I chose. But the next perk is so useful, and that is Improvised Blind. So this further decreases your visibility when inside large bushes and shrubs. So throughout the game, this combined with soft feet, you'll start to realize that you're getting a lot more stealthier as you're moving around, and you won't spook animals. You're almost invisible when you're inside these large bushes and shrubs, as long as obviously the wind is not carrying your scent to the animals. And I would recommend this as soon as anyone can. The last skill inside tier 3 is endurance. All that walking has to be good for something, right? Increase your endurance so that your heart rate rises slower when moving and falls faster when idle. So this only has 1 point that you can put into it, but the heart rate is definitely useful if you're running around and trying to hunt on the go. Obviously, if you've spotted an animal and you've tracked it and you've got enough time to take a shot, this isn't going to really impact you because you've got enough time to let your heart rate fall. But if you're running around and you do spot an animal, you want to make sure that your heart rate can go down. So this can be useful for that. Again, this is one of the ones that I had to put a skill point into to unlock tier 4. So this is one I chose other than the ones I mentioned. So in order to unlock tier 4, you have to have spent 13 skill points, which is 4 more than when you unlocked tier 3. So I opted to put all 4 points into tier 3 skills. So 1 in endurance, 1 in improvised blind, and 2 in innate triangulation, which unlocked tier 4 for me. So let's move on to the last tier. So the top skill, and in my opinion the best skill in the game, is Disturbed Vegetation. So this reveals a new track type, Disturbed Vegetation. Animals sometimes produce these in between other tracks. This makes it easier to follow the trails of difficult animals and reveals the animal's fur type when combined with the track knowledge skill. So earlier in tier 1, we had the track knowledge skill, and level 3 allowed you to spot the fur type when looking at disturbed vegetation. So now you can really make the most of both of those skills together. This is extremely useful for spotting rares. You can know if an animal has albino skin or melanistic, and you can spot that fur type as you're going. So it's really, really useful, and one that you sort of have to go a long time to get. As you see, I'm level 51 and I've only recently just got this skill, but definitely worth it. The other two skills inside of tier 4, not so useful. You have wind prediction. So at level 1, it unlocks the ability to detect when the general wind speed is about to increase by observing how it rolls in over the landscape. Ambient wind noise masks your movement noise and allows you to move more quietly. Level 2 will unlock the ability to approximate the general wind direction and when it will change. Again, useful, but you don't really have control of the weather. Although you can spot when the wind's going to change, I'm just used to sort of adapting my hunt to match the weather. And it's not worth sticking 2 skill points into this, especially as it's an active skill. It means you have to activate it after purchasing, with only 1 active skill being available at once. And the last one for Stalker in tier 4 is Startle Call. This unlocks the ability to stop animals in their tracks for a short time by making an unexpected noise. Perfect for when you're ready to take your shot. After a short duration, the animal will realize that something is wrong and flee. The more difficult the animal, the faster its realization. Again, this could be useful, although it is an active skill and it's deep into tier 4, so you're going to have to really make hard decisions as you get to these tiers. And I opted for disturbed vegetation, but this could be useful depending on your sort of hunting methods. So that sums up Stalker. I'm not really going to put any other skill points into here. If I have skill points, they will go into the Ambusher section, so we're going to move on to that next. So for Ambusher, you see that I have 6 points that I've spent, which will give me 4 of the 13 skills. So again, you need to put 1 skill point into the tier 0 in order to start unlocking the tier 1s. So the first skill that you have inside of this kind of branch is Scent Tinkerer. Not satisfied with the performance of scent lures in the store, become a true scent alchemist. So at level 1, this increases the number of uses per canister for all scent lures purchased. Level 2, it increases the duration of all scent lures. So level 3, it increases the range of all scent lures. And at level 4, it increases the attraction chance of all scent lures. I don't use scents pretty much ever, so I had to put 1 point into this to move into tier 1, and I don't find that useful. Some of the other skills, and especially in that Stalker category, are way more vital to get earlier on in the game. So this brings us to tier 1, and let's start from the top, which is also one of the best skills in the game, and that's spotting knowledge. So this increases the amount of information that can be gained from the last animal spotted. At level 1, it reveals information about how aware the animal is of nearby threats. At level 2, it reveals information about the approximate health of the animal. And at level 3, it reveals information about the approximate trophy and weight of the animals. So level 1 is really useful for spotting to see if they've noticed you as you're walking towards a herd, for example. Level 2, health of the animal is again super useful, and when combined with a later skill, it becomes vital. But as you're spotting, if you shot an animal, you can just track them quickly with your binoculars and see if they are dropping health. This will let you know if you've had a vital shot or if you're going to spend the next half an hour tracking down this animal. And at level 3, this is the game changer, and when it reveals information about your trophy rating and weight, this is where you can spot if one of these animals is going to be a diamond by the trophy score. And this is something that you can look online just to check the different trophy ratings for diamond for each animal. And when you're going around with the binoculars, keep this to hand and just see if one of those animals is diamond. So that brings us to the next skill, which is Dazed and Confused. This adds a random chance of attracting an animal that is not usually attracted by a particular scent. Again, I don't think this is useful and I'm not using scents, but I had to put 5 points into tier 0 and 1 in order to unlock tier 2. So this is why I have this skill, but I wouldn't opt for it if it wasn't needed to move to tier 2. The last skill of this tier is the More the Merrier. This increases the monetary reward gained from completing any mission by 5%. 5% is really a big deal, and you can get much more money from hunting itself. So if you've got the skills to really benefit you with that, then it's well worth spending skill points on that rather than this. So that brings us to tier 2. As I said, you need 5 skill points to get to tier 2. So I've opted for 1 Dazed and Confused, 3 in Spotting Knowledge, and 1 in Scent Tinkerer. So if we move to tier 2 skills, let's start with the top one, which I think is also another one of the best skills in the game, and that is Sight Spotting. So in order to spot animals, usually you would have to use your binoculars, but what this does, it allows you to spot animals while in aim mode with weapons. That means you do not have to switch to binoculars or the rangefinder device. So when you couple that with the Spotting Knowledge skill, you can see the trophy rating and the health just by spotting animals with your scope. So as soon as you shot them, you can just spot and see if that health is going down to know if it's a vital shot, rather than having to run over, check the floor, see the blood trail and track it that way. You'll know pretty much almost instantly if that animal is going to go down quick. So the next skill in this tier is Fatal Attraction. Anyone can use a caller, but it takes a true artist to do it well. At level 1, you increase the chance of attracting animals to your location when using callers, and at level 2, you increase the chance of eliciting a vocalization response from nearby animals when using callers. I do use callers, but not as much. I usually just find herds either drinking or eating. It can be useful if you want to try and draw them out into somewhere you can shoot, but I find callers are pretty effective anyway. But this could be one, if you do use callers frequently, that you might want to go into. But for me, I have 0 skill points here. And the last one in this tier is Impact Resistance. Is it a plane? Is it a bird? No, it's a falling hunter. This reduces the damage taken from falling. You can put 1 point into this, so it's a percentage off of the kind of damage taken. What I'd say with this one is just don't fall. There's no point wasting skill points on something like this, and it's much more useful to put it elsewhere. So in order to unlock tier 3, you need 9 points. As you see, I have 6 skill points spent, and I'm not going to get many more skill points until I reach level 60. So it's unlikely I'm even going to be able to put any of these into tier 3. So I'm likely going to have to choose from one of the other tiers that I've had before. But let's run through the tier 3 skills. So at the top of tier 3, you have Tag. At level 1, this increases the duration of a traced outline on an animal after spotting it. And at level 2, unlocks the ability to add a spotting outline on up to 3 animals simultaneously. So sight spotting, which is a skill we discussed in tier 2, pretty much you can just keep respotting the animal to increase that duration yourself without it sort of dropping off. This is useful for when you're trying to watch something run away and you aren't able to click spot on it again. So level 1 can be useful if you're going down the ambusher route, but with the way that I have my skill points allotted, I put most of them into Stalker, meaning I'm likely not going to be able to go as far as tier 3 in ambusher. But again, if you're going down the ambusher route, this could be useful. The same with the spotting outline on 3 animals simultaneously. The next skill inside of tier 3 is Who's Deer. At level 1, this adds a random chance of attracting a species that is not usually attracted by a particular caller. And at level 2, this adds a random chance of inducing a vocalization response from a species that is not usually affected by a particular caller. Again, I don't really use the caller, so I didn't see the benefit in trying to push for this skill. But if you do use the caller and you want to go down the ambusher route, this could be a great one if you're trying to push for the tier 4 skills. And the last skill in tier 3, and one that pretty much everyone will choose between this or Disturb Vegetation, is Pack Mule. So, clever insight into space management has allowed you to carry more gear. This increases the base carry capacity by 15%, and it does not affect backpacks. So what people will do to increase their load is to basically use the backpacks, but that also increases the noise that you generate. So this is a great tool to sort of carry more weapons or carry a tent on you while you're hunting without sacrificing some of the callers or whatever else you're using in your loadout. I personally will just adapt my inventory and loadout to what I'm hunting, so I don't often come in cases where I want to bring something that I can't carry, and if I do, I will sacrifice that in order to have Disturb Vegetation. So that's all of the tier 3 skills. So if you want to go down the ambusher route and get Pack Mule, you will not be able to get Disturb Vegetation, so keep that in mind. And let's move on to tier 4, which you will have to sacrifice a lot of the Stalker path in order to get to tier 4 here, which is 13 skill points spent in Ambusher in order to unlock, and bearing in mind you only have 22 in total, so you pretty much will only be able to get up to tier 2 in Stalker if you go this route. So the first one in tier 4 is Keen Eye. This unlocks the ability to scout the surrounding area for animals and signs of activity near a lookout point. You must be within 10 meters of the survey map in a lookout point to activate the skill. The action can be repeated, but comes with a cooldown time. So at level 1, it adds a chance of revealing need zones on the map near the lookout point when surveying from it. And at level 2, adds a chance of revealing animal groups on the map near the lookout point when surveying from it. This could be useful, not as useful as some of the other skills in the Stalker category, so this is not one I would ever push for, but if this sounds like something you really want, maybe you could push for it, but as an active skill, definitely not worth it for me. And that brings us to the next skill in tier 4, which is Hill Caller. So this increases the attraction range of all callers when used within 10 meters of a lookout point or inside an elevated structure, for example a tripod, or any of the other hunting structures and blinds that you can create along the way. This could be useful if you are using callers, but as I mentioned, I don't use callers, and I also don't want to sacrifice some of the Stalker skills, so not one I'd ever go for. So the last one in tier 4 is Haggle. You're a likable person. Reduces the cost of all items in the outpost store by 5%. Again, another whooping 5%. Just hunt a little bit more to get those outpost items that you want, and don't sacrifice any skill points doing so, especially when you need to sacrifice a lot of the Stalker skills. So not worth it for me. So let's just do a little rundown again of all the best skills that you should aim for, and if you want to plot a path to get these, I would recommend doing so and just tracking how many skill points you'll need to unlock the tier, how many skill points you have in total, which is 22, and see which paths you can go for. So in Ambusher, the most vital one is sight spotting. This is one, as a new player, you don't realize how beneficial this is, and one that you should push for almost simultaneously with some of the other ones in Stalker, but sight spotting is a very important skill. The next one is spotting knowledge. So you want to put 3 points into this as soon as you can. Again, you'll be juggling through a lot of important skills, but this is definitely one you want to have. This combined with sight spotting is vital to make sure that your hunts go as smoothly as possible. So there's only 2 important skills really in Ambusher, and the rest are in Stalker. So let's run through the Stalker ones. Locate tracks. Again, the only real benefit of this is being able to detect them farther away. There's no real benefit in terms of the tracking cone when looking at the map. So put 3 points into this just to get the far away tracks, but it's probably not a necessity straight away. You can deal with having only level 1 there, unless you obviously need it to get to tier 2. So the next important skill is track knowledge. This one is really useful, and you should put 3 points into this as soon as you can. This at level 3 will be able to give you the max weight animals when you are tracking, and also it combines with the disturbed vegetation later on to give you the fur type of the animal. So that's another important perk. The next important perk is soft feet. So levels 1 and 2, again, I mean, pushing for this probably as a new player is the best route and the way that I went myself. So trying to make sure that you aren't spooking animals quickly. So I put 2 points into soft feet as soon as I could. And the next one up, which is Improvised blind. So another one that you want to push for, which is the one that decreases your visibility inside large bushes and shrubs. So those 4, mainly track knowledge is more important than locate tracks, but track knowledge, soft feet, Improvised blind, and locate tracks are really, really useful skills. And the last one, disturb vegetation, I personally think is going to be the best one in the game, and one that you should push for if you are looking for those rare animals. Else you can try and plot your own route throughout the skills. So those are the best skills I think to go for. If you have any queries, let me know in the comments, or if you think that I've got them completely wrong, also do let me know. So let's move on to perks next. So as the same with skills, you can only get 22 perk points in total, and they are split across 4 different categories: rifles, handguns, shotguns, and archery, with each of those kind of being tailored to that hunting style. But there are some perks inside these categories that are applicable to all weapons. So this is something you definitely need to notice when you're applying your perk points. Again, you can't have all of the perks, so you really have to figure out which ones you do want and aim for those straight away. So the first one we're going to start with is rifles, and as you see, I have 4 out of 6 perks after spending 9 perk points. So the first one up is muscle memory. This one is a really, really useful perk. Your hunting style may be different from mine, so some of the perks that I mentioned may be more applicable for you. So as I'm going through them, just make a note and see which ones you wouldn't want from the ones that I've chosen. So at level 1, this unlocks the ability to ready your next shot without leaving aim mode for rifles, shotguns, and handguns. And at level 2, the increased ready speed after firing for all weapons. So the ready speed is worth it all by itself, and the level 1, be able to ready your shot without leaving aim mode, you will definitely notice an improvement in your hunting after this. And I can't picture hunting before this, so definitely worth putting 2 perk points into this as soon as possible. So in order to unlock the next perk, you'll need to have muscle memory. You can then choose between the top, middle, or bottom branch, and then for the next one after that, in the bottom and the top branch, you need to have the one before. So for example, if I wanted this last one here, I need to get at least 1 point into this one. So the perk that I would say to go for next, and probably before putting 2 points to muscle memory, is zeroing. This is the most important perk in the game. So rifles, by default, before you get this perk, will zero at 150 meters. What this means is the center of your crosshair, when you fire an animal 150 meters away, that will be exactly where the bullet will hit. What this does is allows you to change that zeroing. You can choose between short or long. So as the perk states, unlocks the ability to switch between different zero distances in addition to the default medium range zero on any weapons that support it. So certain rifles, the average rifle will be able to give you up to 300 meter zeroing for the long range, with the short range being 75 meters. That changes depending on the weapon. For example, the 2.2 will allow you to go between 50 for the short, 100 meters for the medium, and long range is 150. So this is something that you will need to get as soon as possible. As I say, as soon as you put one perk into the rifles category, you can go for this one. This is an active perk, so as soon as you purchased it, you should activate it. And you do that by selecting, and you'll get the option to activate. The next perk that we'll go through at the top is Hold Breath. Hold Breath is an action that can be performed in aim mode to steady a weapon temporarily when lining up a shot. So at level 1, you get decreased heart rate penalty from exhaling, which reduces the cooldown until your breath can be held again. At level 2, you get increased duration before you need to exhale when holding your breath. And at level 3, you get decreased aim wobble when holding your breath. Being able to get a steady shot is vital when hunting. So this is one you want to push for, again, as soon as you can. I know I say that for a lot of the perks, but you pretty much need to target for all of these and level up as quick as you can, and this will simplify your hunting experience. So I put 3 points into this, and the last perk inside of this kind of second column is Steady Hands, and this will have decreased wobble when in aim mode using any weapon. Each level unlocked increases the effect. So as I mentioned before, these aren't just for rifles. So when it says any weapon, that could be the handguns, the shotguns, and also the archery. So all the bows and the crossbows. So each level, and there's 2 of them, will decrease your wobble. This, I mean, is really important, especially if you don't have enough breath to sort of, if you're aiming for multiple animals, you shoot one holding your breath, and then you're sort of aiming around to shoot the next one, and you just don't need that wobble. So 2 points into this as soon as you can. Then the last perks for the rifle category, we have Focus Shot. So holding your breath increases zoom using rifles with iron, red dot, and holographic sights. So this can be useful. I don't think it is for me, but if this is something you do when you use iron, red dot, or holographic, then being able to get a little bit of extra zoom could be super useful for targeting those kind of hot spots on the animal. And the last perk inside of the rifles category is Windage. This is the ability to gauge lateral wind direction and speed when in aim mode of any weapon. I personally haven't seen this in action, but this is not something I think I mentioned before in the skills that I really care about, and I will adapt my hunting style to that kind of the weather. And also it is a active perk, so this is something that I have to sacrifice zeroing for, and I would never do that. So that's my rifles. The next one we're going to run through is handguns, and you'll see that I've spent 4 perk points on handguns, which has given me 4 perks. So I put 1 pretty much into each of those perks. So let's run through them. The first one is Sprint and Load. So that unlocks the ability to reload all weapons while running. So again, another perk that targets all weapons, not just the handguns. And being able to reload while you're just sort of running to claim whatever animal you downed, or if you're chasing an animal, then this is really useful. And one that is pretty much one of the ones you should get pretty early. Some of the ones in the rifles that I mentioned before will help you hunt better. So you can always stop, reload. And if you're hunting animals that are stopped or resting, then it's pretty much not needed straight away, but one of the most important ones later on. The next perk, one that I haven't gone for, is Quick Feet. So you can recover a steady aim faster after changing stances when using handguns. Each level unlocked increases the effect. So a changed stance is going between prone, crouch or standing, and when using a handgun you'll get a little bit of a wobble as you're moving there. So I haven't put any points into this. It does target just handguns, and I mainly hunt with rifles anyway, so not one that I want to go for. And I did want to go for the one to the right, but I just went for the bottom branch instead. So that was Survival Instinct. Again, I didn't need this, I just wanted to get the later perks. And what this does is damage from animal attacks are reduced for a short duration after landing a shot on an aggressive animal. So for example, if you're being charged by a wolf, you can shoot that, and if it comes and attacks you, it's going to take less health off of you and less chance of you dying. It's somewhat useful. I do find myself downing these aggressive animals before they do reach me, or easy enough to kind of move away from, aside from sometimes lions and wolves can be pretty fast and you don't really have time to dodge, but not one that I really think is a necessity. However, the next one is Ranger. So when you spot animals, you'll get a rough range of how far away they are. What this perk does, it increases your accuracy when gauging distance of spotted animals. So it does help without having to go into your map and check the distance, or switch over to binoculars to check the distance. Then this is something that is pretty useful to get a rough idea of where to zero, and one that I would suggest going for. And I did put the perk point here anyway, because I wanted to go for one of the last perks in this category. So let's move over to those. So the last one is Lightning Hands. This decreases the reload time of all weapons, and each level unlocked increases the effect. So I've got one perk point in this. Again, reload time, it's super useful, especially if you can sprint and reload at the same time. You're sort of saving a lot of time when readying your next shot. And it just, saves time when you're hunting, really. And the last perk is Quick Draw, which increases the speed and accuracy of hip shots using any weapon except bows and crossbows. Each level unlocked will increase the effect. I don't often hip shot. Maybe if you're using shotguns or a close range with handguns, this could be useful, but not a perk that I do want to push for. I've only went for all of these perks mainly to go for Lightning Hands and the reload while sprinting, so this is why I would go into the handgun category. But if you are going for hip fires, maybe this could be a useful perk for you. So that concludes handguns. So let's move over to shotguns. So I have 7 points in shotguns, and that gave me 4 out of the 6 perks. So let's start with perk number 1. This is Both Eyes Open. It decreases the edge blur when using shotguns with iron, red dot and holographic sights. Each level unlocked increases the effect. I don't use shotguns with iron, red dot or holographic sights. I don't really use shotguns much at all, so not really fussed by this one. It's something that I would deal with if I did have to switch to a shotgun, and I might even put a scope onto the shotgun itself. So not a perk that I really wanted, but one that I needed to go for in order to unlock the next categories. So in the next column, we'll start from the top. You have Fast Shouldering. So what this does is it increases the speed of entering and exiting aim mode using any weapon, as well as the speed of switching weapons. Each level unlocked increases the effect. This one, again, applicable to all weapons, not just shotguns, and something that is extremely useful when you're carrying 2 weapons that you want to shoot a herd with, or if you're just generally wanting to go into aim mode quickly. This helps when you're running around, spot an animal, you want to quickly get your gun out and aim and shoot at it. This will really help you there, so you want to put 2 points into that if this is something that your hunting style does go for. And the next perk in this column is Body Control. So what this does is weapon sights align faster after rotating with any weapon. Each level unlocked increases the effect. So I don't find myself often rotating with the weapons, and if I do, I'm looking for something that is resting or drinking, and it's not something that I will be rotating and quickly trying to take a shot. So it doesn't really bother me, but I put a perk point here just because I wanted the next perk. So we'll move to that next perk, and that is Recoil Management. I mean, I would recommend trying to put 3 points into this as well as soon as possible. So you get less recoil when firing any weapon, and you're able to fire a follow-up shot sooner. Each level a lot increases the effect. So recoil, especially if you're trying to shoot 2 animals from a herd, it's very hard to shoot with most of the weapons and get your follow-up shot without this perk. As a beginner, compared to when you have these perks and later on in the game, hunting is completely different. So you have all of these perks, and recoil management really helps, and one that I definitely recommend. The next perk in this column is Tracer Shot. This adds the ability to trigger a tracer shot when firing shotguns. Pellets will leave behind smoke trails, indicating the spread of the bullet. Again, probably useful if you're using shotguns and you want to sort of know if you're getting vitals, but you combine that with some of the other skills. It's not really a necessity to know the spread of your bullet. You sort of would just shoot the animal, see if the blood is coming out, or if you're checking the health via spotting, just see if you got a vital shot. So not one that I'm ever going to go for. And on top of that, it's an active perk, so you'd have to remove zeroing, which is something I never ever do. And the last perk of shotguns is Boomstick. So this gives you the ability to fire both chambers at the same time when using a double barrel shotgun. As I mentioned, I don't really hunt with shotguns, and if I did, it's probably going to be a pump action shotgun and not the double barreled. If you're using double barrel and you think this perk is for you, then I would definitely recommend going for it. Pretty much guarantees a kill if you're looking for vital organs, but probably just a fun one more than anything else. Doesn't really help the overall hunting experience of using all the different types of weapons, mainly for people that are focused primarily on shotguns. So that concludes shotguns. As I said, I got 7 points in there. I've got 2 points in fast shouldering, 3 points in recoil management, 1 point in body control, and 1 point in both eyes open. So the next category is archery. As you see, I spent 0 perk points, so I've got 0 out of the 6 perks, and I don't think I'm ever going to put a perk point into anything archery. This is not something that I do. As I say, I mainly use rifles, but if you are using a bow or a crossbow, some of these perks could be really useful for you. I think for the remaining perk points I get up to level 60, I'm probably going to end up putting them into lightning hands, for example. Currently only have 1 point there. I'm going to go for 3 out of 3 and make sure my reloads are as quick as possible. So the first perk is Full Draw. This increases the time an arrow can be drawn in aim mode before fatigue sets in. Fatigue will cause aim wobble, followed by a disruption of aim mode. Each level unlocked will increase that effect. So if you're using the bows, you want to be able to look and kind of hold your breath for a while, then Full Draw is the perk for you. And one that if you wanted any of these other perks, you'll have to put at least 1 perk point into it. So the next one is Move and Shoot. So this is decreased wobble while moving in aim mode using any weapon. I say it's not just put onto bows and crossbows. You can use this with rifles, handguns and shotguns, but I don't find myself often moving while using weapons. So all my shots are pretty much taken when I'm holding breath and standing still or crouching. So not a perk that I really want to push for. But if this is something that you're running around, moving, very gung-ho, then you might want to go for Move and Shoot. This then will open up the next 2 branches. So for the next column, at the top, you have Increased Confidence. So this increases accuracy of all bows when shooting from the hip. I've not really used a bow or a crossbow often. Not sure how often you do shoot from the hip with the bow or the crossbow. So if this is something you feel like is going to be a necessity for you, then push for it. But for me, I don't think I'd ever put a perk point here, even if I was respecing. Not one that I think I'd go for. And the next perk in the column is Recycle. This unlocks the ability to retrieve fired arrows and bolts, and there's a random chance that arrows or bolts will break upon impact, in which case it cannot be retrieved. So level 1 unlocks the ability to retrieve arrows or bolts, and level 2 will decrease that chance that the arrow or bolt will break upon impact. So I think this is probably pretty useful for saving you some money on arrows, especially if you're getting pretty close or going to collect. And if you're a good shot with your bow, then you can pretty much make most of your money back in terms of your arrows firing, but not one that I would go for, as it's bow specific and not one that I really use at all. So the last 2 perks, you have Like a Pro. This unlocks the ability to enter aim mode with a bow while prone, which allows for stealthy bow hunting. This is obviously not that realistic and not something you can do in real life with a bow. You're not lying down and shooting it, but this could be really useful when you're trying to get really close to the animals. Being able to lie down and just take that shot prone, this could be one if you're using a bow often that you'd want to go for. There's a lot of problems I find with lying down and shooting. Sometimes you will clip your bullets or maybe even your arrows. I haven't used a bow often when you're lying down, so I prefer to take most of my shots crouched or standing up. But again, I'm not using bows, so I don't know how useful this one would be, and not one I think I'd ever go for. And the last perk is Pumping Iron. Increased arm strength means more draw length, increases the kinetic energy of all bows, which in turn means more damage, penetration and speed using the same arrows. Each level unlocked increases the effect. So I think if you're using bows often and you are an archer, then I would go for this perk. This sounds really useful, especially the increased damage and penetration. One that probably is going to be important for all of the archers out there. Again, I'm never going to go for this one. I mainly will use rifles, so I don't see the value in this, and there's a lot of other perks that I'd rather put my perk points to. So you need to spend a lot of perk points just to get there, which will sacrifice some of those perks that I've spoke about before. So let's have a run through again of all the perks that I think are the best. If you have different opinions, please let me know in the comments, or if you have any other queries, do let me know. So in shotguns, the important perk here is Recoil Management, and you'll want to put 3 points into this as soon as you can. The next perk that is useful is Fast Shouldering, so entering and exiting aim mode using any weapon, as well as switching the weapons. I'd almost definitely put 2 points into this. We then go into the handguns category, and you go to the end and you have Lightning Hands, which decreases the reload time of all weapons. I'm probably going to end up putting 3 out of 3 points into this, so this is really useful for my style of hunting. If reload time doesn't really matter when you're hunting, then you can probably go for something else. And then Sprint and Load, one that you will need anyway to get that last perk, but another useful perk for me. That moves us on to the rifles category. Let's go from the bottom here. So Steady Hands. This is a super important perk, and I put 2 perk points into that as soon as I could. Then you've got Zeroing, the most important perk I think in the whole game, and that's what I'd put 2 points into, probably before all of the other ones. You'd have to put 1 perk point at least into the first one of this category, but as soon as you can, get 2 perk points into Zeroing. It will change your hunting experience, I promise you. And the top one is Breath Control. So this is something that I would put 3 points into by the end of your journey, but pretty much early would be good to put this one in. And we have Muscle Memory, so increased ready speed and ability to ready up your next shot without leaving aim mode. I would go for 2 points here as soon as possible as well. Probably go for 1 point here, 2 into Zeroing, and come back to Muscle Memory before moving on to the other rifle category ones. If you are a rifle hunter, if you see value in some of the other perks I mentioned, then do go ahead for those. Let me know in the comments if you did go for a different strategy, or you think there are better perks out there. So that sums up all the skills and perks. I will end up updating to see if I change any of my skill or perk setups, but I'm 9 points now away from level 60, and I think I pretty much have all of my favorite skills and perks unlocked. Cool. Well, thank you for watching, guys. There'll be some more Hunter Call of the Wild content coming up. I'm going to be doing a DLC breakdown for new players, as well as things that I wish I'd known when I first started playing the game. So look for those coming up, as well as my Red Deer grind. Thank you for watching and happy hunting.